Okay, so start off with just a little self massage exercise. Many of you have done with me before. It's a good way of just settling in, physically warming up, just rubbing your fingers together, rubbing your hands together, and then tapping lightly over your face. And then over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Giving yourself a moment just to get a sense for what's happening, the vibration of the muscles as you go down your arm, maybe feeling your fingers vibrating. And then on the other side, these little things that we notice in your arm, they help to just gather our attention in. So there's a physical aspect, of course, but also to do with the mind. Going onto your back. And then around your hips. And your legs. Onto your belly. And then onto the upper part of your chest. Standing comfortably, you want to have your feet directly below your hips, pointing forwards, or maybe slightly turned out if that's better for you, but not too far turned out. Have your weight a little bit forwards, hips settling back, and turning in the centre of the body. So just drawing your attention into your body, noticing your posture, your movements. This is the sort of first stage, if you like, for all of you, all of us, whether we've been doing it for decades or it's your first time. It's just this quietening, settling of your mind into your body. It is in itself one of the great benefits of the art. And it's also taken us towards a way of moving that we can bring an awareness to, and that we can bring a sense of intentionality to. So, for those of you who are new, if you could just think of this more as a moving meditation than as an exercise. You are exercising, so I'm not overlooking that, but this meditative element, this way of using our mind, bringing our mind and body and energy together into one cohesive unit, is really one of the ongoing processes that we look to build in Tai Chi. Having begun to sort of build up a picture in our mind of how our bodies are moving, standing, we can then begin to both fill in the detail and to bring about subtle changes. This is always done with care, with patience. Postures that we take are subtly different to much of the way that we move and stand in our everyday lives, and it takes time for our bodies to adapt and to condition to that, so nothing should be forced. It can be valuable to have a sense of why we take these different postures. Why do we let the knees bend, for instance? Why do we have the weight forwards? And just as a little sort of experiment here, if I stand sideways on, you'll see my weight forwards, I can let my hips drop back. I have this little gentle curve in my legs. like there's a little ball tucked in behind each knee. So try that, and then very gently, very carefully, draw your knees back and notice what happens in your body with the movements as you do that. Go back, just let the knees soften a little bit, do that a couple of times. And what I find is when I pull my knees back, my whole body locks up. So one of the outcomes that we're looking for is to be able to take a posture that allows a degree of space in the body, space from tightness, stiffness and resistance, and that allows for movement, so that in the course of moving we're not fighting against our own bodies. And that movement will be things like muscles and joints moving, of course the mechanical movements if you like. Slightly more subtly, things like circulation, breathing, these are digestion, these are all things that require movement. And there's almost like a level below that is this growing awareness of a pulse, a rhythm that runs through our bodies that gently governs all of the other movements. We want this to take place with a sense of harmony rather than resistance. So all of these things are considerations in these opening parts of the session. In addition, of course, this is literally a physical warm-up that helps to get the blood circulating through your muscles, warms your joints up. So, very simple but very useful exercise. Turning your hands palm forwards, raising up, and just bring your hands to a position where they're comfortable, where you're not having to stiffen or to strain in your shoulders or your arms, just to maintain the position. A bit more open across your chest and your upper back than the previous exercise. And then letting your hands drop down. Just 1 foot forward, keep the width of your step and step about the same in length, and begin to just gently push your weight from one foot to another, letting your hips and waist turn, your upper body turn in response to the movement. Really feeling that your attention can go down into your feet, so that when we move our weight from foot to foot, our whole body moves again as one unit. So the initial thing that I said was bringing your attention into your body, getting this lovely sense of stillness, of calmness in our minds for a few moments. And then we start to make it more specific. So in Tai Chi, it's very important that we are aware of what's happening in our feet, in that connection to the ground between the soles of our feet and the floor that we're standing on. Very important that we maintain that connection and move from the ground, because that way we're more likely to get that sense of movement as one unit. As one of the old writings in Tai Chi puts it, when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion. And whilst that might not be literally true, we'd be flying through the air if that were the case. It means really, one way or another, your whole body is engaged. Your whole body is one unit, not separate things somehow glued onto each other. And this again reflects back on that sense of a gathered attention. So these three elements of movement, the energy, physical posture, the mechanics of the movement, the body, and attention and intention really are different aspects of the same whole. but we often find that they've somehow separated in our lives. And then the other foot forwards. So these are things that we see as ongoing practices in Tai Chi and Qigong. Whether, as I said before, you're new or you're very experienced with this, we always want to re-establish these ideas and this way of moving right at the beginning of our practice, and ideally right at the beginning of our day, of course. These are the things that we start off with, also the things that we want to build to take with us into our daily lives. And shake out. So, feet are directly below your hips so that they can support your hips better. If your feet are too close together, it can get a bit wobbly. Likewise, too wide apart. Toes pointing forwards or slightly turned out, as I said before. That's fine. That's too much because now you've got your knees pointing in one direction and your shoulders pointing in the other. That's going to create tension in your body. Trying to find an alignment for your body so that gravity works down through your body straight into your legs. It's not pulling you over. Now, push your shoulders up towards your ears and then slowly drop them down, noticing what's happening in the big muscles of your back and your shoulders. As your shoulders drop down, they no longer have to pull your shoulders up, and we get this feeling of ungripping, of unclenching. Terms I use for this: letting go, releasing, softening, all derived from the Chinese term sung. People with a little bit more experience, you can begin to detect not just the physical sort of ungripping of muscles, but also the quality of movement that comes with that. And one of the things we want to try and do is maintain the intention to have that quality of movement, to have that sense of the softening of the muscles in both directions. You may find yourself, for instance, sometimes we might find here, I go to push my shoulders up and my fingers tense. That's not going to help the movement. So we try and notice those things that we're doing that really aren't useful for the movement. It's harder with the push-up, of course. We can apply the same kind of idea in the middle of the body. So this is pelvis, hips, buttocks, lower back, belly. You could, for instance, just very gently pull your belly in. You feel the tightening that comes with that, and then again, the releasing, noticing what's happening. As before, if you can, noticing the quality of the movement and trying to maintain the intention to reproduce those qualities as you pull your belly in, as well as when you let it drop out, so that we're not straining to move. You also may notice that actually doing this in the middle of the body radiates out into the rest of the body, so this is a key area to look for that releasing. And the other thing to notice is how you start to feel a little bit heavier in the air, as though your centre were dropping through your legs to the ground. And so this is the process that we call rooting down in Tai Chi. It doesn't necessarily require a deep stance at this point. What we can begin to do though is, as we let the belly drop out, maybe feel that our hips are drawn back down a little bit. Being careful of our knees, don't bend the knees too far, and at a certain point just let your legs push you up. And again, as you push up, trying not to stiffen, trying not to strain. So we now have this very fluid two-way movement working through the body. The pull of gravity drawing us downwards, and then as our legs get compressed and begin to push up, feet pushing down into the ground, we get this sense of a rising movement, a rising energy. This is a key cycle of movement, of energy in Tai Chi. This is what we call rooting down. Three things about rooting down. One, I've already mentioned, that it actually produces this cyclical movement, this cyclical energy expanding and contracting through our bodies. On a very physical scale, it enables us to drop our centre of gravity, and the lower your centre of gravity, the more stable you are. The more stable you are, the less tightness there is going to be in the upper part of your body. And finally, because this is done with awareness, with intention, we literally begin to ground our thoughts. This is a way in which we deepen that gathered quietness, calmness. This time, as you sink down, without losing that movement, bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball, and then just push it up. Body expanding and contracting. This is the exercise rooting down. Imagine you're cradling the ball, pushing the ball up, and then from here, imagining you're in water, letting your hips drop, and you're pressing the ball down into water. And the image of moving through water is a universal one in Tai Chi. It helps us to develop this style of movement that is less strained, more flowing. It can also have a very subtle conditioning effect. Since we're using more and more of our body beyond just a limited range of muscles, so the physical conditioning extends beyond that limited range of muscles. Tendons, ligaments, skeletal muscle, fascia, the bones themselves, and even perhaps the sense of the movement becoming a little bit more resilient, becoming a little bit more dense. Sometimes it's said as though the air around us were thicker than normal. It can be very interesting to notice how our bodies respond to images. It's not going to work with every image that we use for you. Don't feel that you failed if an image doesn't make sense. Sometimes it takes a while to feel what's going on with a particular image. Sometimes it never works. But it's one of the very key ways that we bring our attention and our intention into our bodies and to begin to influence the movements. So the image of moving through water, the intention to move with that sense of flow, that sense of a released effort we found a few moments ago, an intention to maintain your root, your alignment with the pull of gravity. These all collectively come into a concept termed central equilibrium. These are the characteristics, the core characteristics of the art that we want to try and maintain through all of the movements. Now, rotating your hands, fingers pointing away from your body, pushing up, and feeling your arms pushed away from your body. They'll naturally swing up. This is the exercise, the wild goose. So the image here could be of the bird in flight, if that conveys quality of a smoothness, a grace of movement perhaps. But again, it might not work for you. And an alternative image here could be remembering that you're moving in water, that there's a small ball underneath the palm of each hand, and as you sink down, you're pressing those balls down. And as you push up, you allow the ball to come up, but quite slowly. And then your hands drop down, crossing in front of your belly, pushing up. And this time, the intention is to take that rise in movement in your arms, and just have this sense of a circle, two circles in front of you. The fingers tracing out that shape. The exercise is called Parting the Cloud, so it has this nice sort of open, expansive quality about it. Now, when you come down this time, bend your elbows, go back to the first of these exercises and practice them in a little sequence of 3. We do rooting down. That's followed by the wild goose. And then parting the clouds. Those of you familiar with this, you'll perhaps have an idea of the subtle changes that we experience within our bodies from one movement to another, depending on how well you know the exercises. And just remember that we were able to bring a degree of intentionality to those subtle changes, one way or another. Memory being another aspect of intention. People who are newer to this, you may be able to do that, that's great if you can. But it can also be just a really good exercise for beginning that process, enabling us to just develop the ability to notice very subtle changes within our bodies, patterns of expansion and contraction, pathways of movement. And these are outcomes of that subtle underlying energy that we begin to feel. You can begin that process perhaps by focusing on one part of your body, maybe your back, your shoulders, your belly. Just notice from there what happens as you change from one movement to another. So this one more time. Good, and let your arms drop down. Take a moment just to feel the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders, weight of your body flowing down through the center and your hips, and then pushing up and bringing your attention to one side of your body as you push up, pushing your arm up. At the top of the movement, wind around. Notice my elbow is still bent and pull down. Again, just taking a moment to settle, feeling the weight of your arms, weight of your body, and then push up on the other side. So we're moving our attention and our intention from one side to another via this moment of just settling in the center. This is the exercise Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. So as well as these subtle movements within the body, we also become aware that there are moments in the exercises, not when the exercise pauses, not when it stops, but when there's just a little bit of a break. I think of them as being like commas in the sentence. And these are moments when we can resettle. We often find that our movements start to get faster, less connected, and this is often driven by a restlessness in our minds, and these little moments of settling can help to counter that. I think they're most easily felt at the end of the contracting stage of each exercise, but again, people with more experience here as well, as you wind around, you might begin to experience it. The ideal would be that we never lost it, but in very practical terms we know that we're going to. So we practice this idea of returning on a regular basis. So Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky. It's feeling that rise and expanding movement through your leg, the side of your body and your arms, one unit. Trying not to stiffen up in your shoulder. A feeling that the side of your body and your shoulder are being very gently massaged. One more time. Come up to that higher stance. Don't lock your knees back. Just have this sense of a gentle curve in your knees, hips hanging back a little bit. A feeling that lower back, hips and buttocks are overhanging slightly. It's strong in our legs, strong in the muscles of the legs, but it shouldn't be straining your knees. And the next two exercises are done in this position. There's no up and down movement, but you've got a posture that allows that movement internally. Gravity is still working down through your body, and we've still got that response from the legs, that upward movement. It's almost like you dropped into water, and you drop down into water, and then the buoyancy of the water pushes you up, and you found a kind of point of equilibrium where you can float. Bring your hands to your sides, and with the inside of your arm lightly touching the side of your hips from here. Pushing up, keeping your hands a little bit in front of your body, lengthening through your back. Coming down, winding your arms around, coming back, lightly touching your sides, and then pushing out from the center. Turn just a little bit to redirect your arms. Coming back. Once again, coming back to that center part of your body. Turn the other way and coming back. As you touch the side of your center, feel that sense of dropping through your hips again, and then pushing out and back. Contracting back into the center. Pushing in four directions. And I mentioned a few moments ago that idea of a process of returning. And what we find, and it's very clear, I think, in this exercise, the pattern of expansion and contraction. Our arms push out, our attention goes out. But then we come back and, as it were, touch base for a moment. And then push out again. So ideally we would not lose that stillness, and the stillness becomes an integral part of our movements, part of the movement that really is essential. Again, you may experience a kind of massaging quality as you feel the movements within your body. This is another image we use. Sometimes it's said it's as though all the internal organs are very gently bathed in the energy. One more round. So hopefully we start to feel an increasing sense of being very calm whilst we're moving. Don't feel you failed when we lose that. It's always going to get lost at some point. But it's one of those things that builds, and is one of the great benefits of the art. Now, let your hands drop down again. Feel the weight of your arms hanging. Focusing again on one side. Let your arm get pushed out. Draw your fingers back. Let your hands swing around in a half circle until it's in line with your nose, and then all the way down. The weight of your arm hanging again, and then push out. The more we become aware of these subtle details of movement and posture, the more our attention becomes anchored in our body, and the more sustainable that sense of stillness and calmness is. And in the turn, so once again, there's a value to an awareness of posture and movement, in as much as we're able to bring a sense of intention and to build that, to have better posture, better movement. But it's also one of the key ways in which we gather our attention and develop this sense of stillness, quietness. And then change to the other side. Notice any difference between one side and another. And that combination of a quieter, more gathered attention and a more spacious posture really help us to cultivate that sense of the internal movement, the internal energy flowing more freely and flowing with a greater degree of resilience. Add in the turn. Now, arms hanging down, your attention back in the centre of your body, pushing your hips back, pelvis tilting, and that takes your head and shoulders forwards, but it keeps your centre of gravity over your legs. Then you let gravity draw your hips down, your pelvis levels off, bringing your head and shoulders up nice and smoothly, and push up. Once again, don't think of this as a back bend, pushing your hips back. Sinking down, letting the hips drop down, and then pushing up. So again, seeing how significant this attention to the middle part of our body is. Go very carefully here with your knees and your back. Let your arms get pushed up, and then The exercise is called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Just a gentle lengthening through your back and spine, through your arms and fingers, but still with the intention to maintain the feel of the movement, a sense of space in your body. So not overdoing this, not straining. You should always feel at the extent of the movement that you could have moved a little bit further. And that will help to avoid straining in some of these more demanding exercises, more demanding physically. This time, when you come back up, hands are palm down, turn, then push your hips back, pushing your hands forwards, swing your hips across, let them drop down and back to the front. Polishing the table. Just remember, this is not a competition. Moving as far as you're comfortable moving as far as you can sustain that sense of the internal movement. So you can see what my hips are doing. I'm exaggerating a bit here. See how they swing across, drop down, turn back to the front. In that moment when you come back to the upright position, allow your centre to drop towards the ground again. Once again, re-establishing the qualities of this posture, qualities of mind and body, of central equilibrium. One more in each direction. And then, once again, standing. So this central area of the body, hips, waist, pelvis, becomes an increasingly important point of focus of attention, and it's the central part of our focus. It's the part of the body that we want to drop towards the ground, to root down. It's the part of the body that when we move there in one way or another, as we've discovered, will move the rest of the body. It's an important energy centre as well. And it's also, I feel, the part of the body that we can bring our attention to the centre and down in to the ground when we're looking for that stillness. So that the idea of the stillness, the calmness within the movement, it's not looking at calmness, stillness as a sort of abstract feeling. There's a very definite physical location that we learn to bring our attention to, that we find that we're able to bring our attention to over a period of time. And again, I do feel this is one of the great benefits of the art, one of the great things that we take into our daily lives. So in all sorts of ways, this awareness of the centre of the body is literally central to the whole art. Now, changing the stance again, turn one foot out, and I would invite you to play around with the angle of that once you're in the stance. Step forwards, the front toes point straight forwards. You keep the width of your step about the same in length, maybe for those of you who've been doing this a while, a little bit longer. And once again, transferring the weight. But this time, a little bit more slowly. And once again, there's a moment of settling, that punctuation in the sentence. It just stops the movement, stops our thoughts running away from us. And that moment comes when our weight settles into the leg. You might want to remember that feeling of releasing, of ungripping in your body that we discovered earlier at that point. Just beginning to allow your centre of gravity, to allow your centre to settle more into one leg. You won't get all of your weight into one leg at the moment. It would be something like 70% as you go back, 60% as you go forwards. But we begin to build on that. You can have the front foot slightly turned out now if it helps. You go forwards, you push your back knee in, you let your hip drop and find that your body will shift a little bit more over the front leg. Put the heel down, you go back, you raise the toes, and the same thing happens there. So I mentioned this term central equilibrium earlier. Chinese term is Zhongding. And we began to get a sense of how that can feel over two legs. And remember, this is a quality not simply of the body, but including our minds, our gathered attention, and the sense of the energy. This is the concept, if you like, that includes all of these. And now we're starting to feel the possibility of experiencing that for a moment or two at least over one leg. So this time when you go into your back foot, just gently draw your front foot in, contract the leg, push out again, put the heel down, lower the ball of your foot, gently press into the floor, plant the foot, then move the weight. So one of the reasons we take a slightly shorter step in these arts is to enable us to place the foot without falling into it, planting the foot, going back. Almost like you're treading on thin ice or you're walking in the sea on a soft seabed and it keeps moving around and you want to be very sure of your step. Planting the foot means that gentle press into the ground, establishing that physical contact between the sole of your foot and the floor. Shake out. Try that with your other foot forwards. So step into what we call the bow stance. Recognize that when we take that moment to settle, to release into one leg, there's this apparent pause in the movement. It's actually a change of direction, pause from backwards to down. Actually, one of the things that we're doing there is further compressing, further loading the legs. And so we can begin to see this integration of stillness and movement because it's that compression of the legs that is such a key energy producer, driving so many of the movements. There's many forms of energy in your body. We get energy from the food that we eat, we get energy from our breathing. There's all sorts of ways that is experienced within the body. But this, what we might call a kinetic energy, is very characteristic of Tai Chi. The others are important, of course. So again, we have that underlying pulse, that underlying rhythm. You may find that you quite naturally begin to develop a breathing rhythm in conjunction with the movement. That tends to emerge quite naturally for some people, not for everybody. You might not keep it all the time, but you will also find that your improved posture enables that, but not forcing your breath. Going into your back foot, raising your toes, front toes, and the front foot pushing the back heel forwards, just letting your weight settle incrementally bigger into each leg. Taking a moment when you do that just to register your posture. One of the things I found is that over the years of practice, I'm more able to bring an intention to realign my posture quite kind of quickly, not in any great detail, but we have a sense of the feel of the movement. And reproducing that feel, reproducing the feel of the posture, becomes again something that is intentional. Stepping in. And then take a few steps through, so you can go forwards or backwards depending on where you have the space, of course. Notice that what I'm doing is I'm bringing my foot in here before I push out. There might be times when we put our toes down here because we want to make sure that again our posture allows us to take the step. Changing direction if you haven't done so already. So here I get a sense of my posture. I can bring the foot in, and here again that sense of settling. If we practice this, it becomes much more of a habit. So many of these aspects that I'm talking about sort of tick away in the background. Bringing your feet parallel. Shake out. So now we bring our upper body back into the movement. It's important to realise that this is quite a tricky thing to do. We're hardwired to pay more attention to our hands, to our feet. So we can easily lose that sense of what's happening in the legs, in the movement of the weight. But as we're discovering, this is really essential to the art. So we learn, as I've just mentioned, to develop these aspects of central equilibrium, the movements, the settling in, the releasing, and so on and so forth, as part of the background, the continuing background to everything else that happens in Tai Chi. And again, by extension, part of the ongoing background in our daily lives. This sort of flows into our daily activities. So have your weight back, have your arms at your sides, push your weight forwards, and as you settle into the front foot, let your arms swing through and past your hips. Going back, same idea. So most of the time your arms are being led, but they just swing through a little bit here, curving gently. So they swing past at that moment when you're settling into the leg. This is called fisherman cast net. So we settle into the back leg, we release, we start to feel that push coming up from the ground, and we let it move us forwards and flow into the arms. We settle into the front leg, so the movement pushing us back, letting it flow into the arms. A very smooth feeling of movement in your shoulders, not straining, as though somehow the movement were gently massaging the shoulder internally. Body moving as one unit, body, mind and energy all moving as one. Be aware of those subtle changes of expansion and contraction within the body, bringing an intentionality to that. So it begins to feel almost like the movement happens by itself, but in fact the movement begins to build from within your body. And this is a subtle change in our development in Tai Chi as the movements become more internalized in that way. This time, as you settle into your front leg and your arms swing through, turn. This is the exercise Wind Blows the Willows. You come back, your body contracts, letting your arms drop down, settle into the backwards and turn. Over here we have the full range of factors involved in the movement. One of the old writers in Tai Chi says, first in the mind, looked at that, and then increasingly, a bit later, it says the movement is rooted in our feet, transmitted through our legs, guided, directed through that center part of our body, and expressed in our upper body and arms. Moving from the ground, moving in a centered way. Not losing that sense of stillness and calmness as we move. Okay, now change over, do the same two exercises on the opposite side. Remembering, move from the ground. Feel your arms being moved, feel they just flow through. This is a lovely exercise, a very simple exercise to help us to get used to the feeling in the arms. And there's a very, to my mind, a very unique feeling in our upper body, in the movement of our arms and our hands, when we have this sequence, when we have this chain of movement. When we lose that, if we're paying attention, we notice a change. Movements may still flow, but they don't have the same substance, more inclined to stiffen up, more inclined to become a little bit more frantic. Settling into your front leg and turning, wind blows the willows. Maybe as though you're moving through water, or as though the air around you is thicker than normal. Requiring a little bit more effort, but not a strain, not a stiffening. Now we're going to combine this with the stepping that we just did. So again, go forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the room. I'm going to go forwards, I push my back knee in, I bring the foot in. Again, I take a moment to find central equilibrium, to find my alignment, to settle, and then I step through. This is called Dragonfly Skims the Water. We can make it a little bit more flowing, and what you may find you're comfortable doing, don't worry if you're not, is just raising the leg. It's important as we do that we don't do it in such a way that develops a straining feeling in our hips, because that will throw our pelvis out. So don't get too concerned with standing on one leg, going back. If you are able to stand on one leg, you need to be able to do it without straining. And it's better to keep your foot down and to feel you've got that quality in your body, that quality of song, than it is to raise your leg and find that you're stiffening up. And then bring your feet back. So coming back to this original stance, the parallel stance, and finishing with the exercise, just building on that idea of a return, of coming back to central equilibrium, to the familiar feelings, the increasingly familiar feelings of being centered, being rooted, being calm, being spacious in our posture, whatever qualities you find are most prominent for you. The mountain can be an image for all of those qualities, and the idea is that we can come back to that. We come back through releasing, through sung. You could say that sung is the pathway to the mountain. But also we can find our own anchors for this process. And this is an important quality, and again, something we can take with us into our daily lives. So just sinking down, pushing up, your arms being pushed out, and at the top of the movement, bringing them around as though you're going to hold a ball against your chest. Drawing in, turn your hands palm down, let your hips drop, shoulders drop, and your arms follow. Return into the mountain. Repeat a few times. Getting used to this feeling of coming back. It's such a great asset in our lives. And noticing for yourself what it is that draws you back. An image, a sensation in your body, an idea. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it actually is useful to you, something that you may find useful perhaps later in the day. One more time. And stop. Thank you very much for watching and joining in, everybody. If you wish to get in touch, please do. Always good to hear from you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.